very much. This isn't part of my set, but you may like to know that doing stand-up is a very good laxative. I've done this 4 times and it still works. I'm Jonathan Wyatt. I'm a counsellor. I'm a counsellor, not a counsellor. I'm a therapist. I'm not an elected member. That is my gratuitous knob joke. Elected member. When I say my gratuitous knob joke. I'm a counsellor, a therapist. My research is about what happens in the consulting room. The stories from our lives that we bring there, how we talk about them there, the stories we tell about what takes place there. So it's mostly stories of pain, loss, and grief. Sometimes hope, intimacy, and love. But counselling is serious. It's not that funny. I don't deal in numbers. I used to when I worked for the NHS in a doctor's surgery. I had to fill in forms with people every time I saw them with questions like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how close to despair are you? Where 1 is despair, I laugh in your face, and 5 is despair and me, we have a joint mortgage. I had to fill in those forms with people every time I saw them at the end of every session so that we could tell, or someone could tell, apparently, the extent to which the counselling was working, how good a job I was doing. In 7 minutes' time, I'm going to ask you the question. So no, I don't deal in numbers, I'm interested in the stories of counselling. Counselling is serious, it's not that funny, and it's private. I can't just run from the consulting room to my laptop and type, "You'll never guess what she just said." I can adjust details, I can change names, I can wait a long time to publish, I can ask people's permission, so it's possible, but it's tricky ethically. So I'm also interested in the counsellor's stories, about what it's like to be a therapist, how we experience it, what goes on inside. At least then it's about the counsellor and not the client. It's the counsellor's stories, not the client's stories. It's mine, not theirs. So I'm on safe, ethical grounds when I tell you that I once slept with a client. I used to work at the doctor's surgery on a Wednesday. On this particular week, I'd been to a conference in the States and I'd flown back on the Monday. And I'm with Ellie, my final client of the day on Wednesday. It's about 5:45 p.m. We're about halfway through the session. She's telling me about her week. And she's telling me a story about how she and a colleague have fallen out over a stapler at work. And of course at this point I want to tell you that I am, of course, adjusting the details of these stories to protect people's confidentiality. It wasn't actually a stapler, it was a hole punch. So she's talking to me about the stapler, and please bear in mind this is just 48 hours after a long haul flight and a very, very busy conference. She's telling me about the stapler. I wake up when she's regaling me with the story of how she and her partner have fallen out the evening before while watching Silent Witness. From the stapler to Silent Witness, I had gone. Drifted off for a few seconds, a minute, maybe more, however long it takes to get from office equipment to bad crime drama. Ellie didn't notice, apparently, or at least if she did, she didn't care. Maybe I was a better therapist when I was asleep. or maybe she didn't have the heart to tell me. Maybe she couldn't get angry with me. Maybe she couldn't say, "Oi, Jonathan, wake the fuck up." So that was Ellie, the client I slept with. She came back the next week too. I fell asleep on another client once. In the long gap between my morning and afternoon sessions, I would sometimes wander home, get some lunch and have a lie down. On this particular afternoon, however, I woke up at 4:30 p.m, which is 15 minutes late for my first afternoon client, Peter. I leapt off the sofa, I got onto my bike and I raced back to the surgery like that kid in E.T. And if he'd been a therapist. And And I got there and found Peter just waiting, patiently reading. I grovelled, I tried to explain, I promised him an extra session, and he came back the next week as well. So counselling is serious, and it's private, and it's not that funny. Especially when the reason why Peter first came to see me was because he felt invisible. So I was saying earlier that telling clients stories is ethically problematic, and as you've seen, when I talk about being a counsellor, I talk about clients. So another angle on this kind of research is instead to focus upon your own stories of pain, loss and grief. So my stories of pain, loss and grief. So I could tell you about the episode in the Swiss hotel jacuzzi involving a minor cultural misunderstanding about dress code. There was the pain of my embarrassment, the loss of my dignity and grief for my pride, and a thankfully non-elected member. But I can't talk about that. I've never talked about that. I've never even talked about that with my therapist. Therapists have therapists. It's a pyramid scheme. So I'll tell you a different story, an easier story, sleep-related again, longer-term sleep. The moment my dad died. So you've had a bit of sex, reference to sex, and reference to politics, and now you've got a dose of death. Right? So we're gathered around my dad's hospital bed as my brother Simon, my sister Nicola, our mum and me, and there's Sister Mary. Nicola's my sister. Sister Mary was some random nun. And Dad's here. Just here. We're telling him old familiar stories. We're telling him what a great dad he's been. We're telling him we're going to look after Mum. Sister Mary asks if she can pray. My brother prays to God's victory over death, that kind of thing. There's silence. Dad breathes in, and a little while later breathes out, and that's it. He's gone. Stillness. There's the sound of traffic outside the window. There's comings and goings in the corridor. And then Dad sits up. Slow, steady, not far but further than you'd expect of a dead man. Cars crash. There's screams in the corridor. We all leap out of our seats in horror, and in so doing, my knee releases the neat little green button it's been inadvertently pressed against. Such stories are indeed serious and, amongst ourselves, private. And on a scale of 1 to 5, pretty close to fucking hilarious. I've been Jonathan Wyatt, counsellor. Thank you for listening. I feel much better now.